Number 10. Working alone. Los Angeles is famous for being home to movie stars and all kinds of celebrities. Over the years, millions have flocked to the area to take a shot at fame or profit off of the entertainment industry in Hollywood. And with so many people in a spot all at once, it's not a question of if something bad will happen, but when. 24-year-old Brianna Cooper fell victim to LA crime at the hands of Sean Laval Smith. Brianna was a student at UCLA pursuing a graduate degree. On January 13, 2022, she was working at a furniture store on La Brea Avenue when Sean randomly attacked her. Right before the assault, Cooper texted a friend saying she was sketched out by a man walking around the shop, stating he looked very suspicious. There were no other employees in the store working that day. She was all alone when Sean took a knife and stabbed her over and over. An autopsy later revealed that Brianna sustained 46 injuries total, all over her body, each nearly 5 inches deep. Security cameras caught Sean leaving the store through a back alley. Then more footage showed him nonchalantly going into 7-Eleven and buying some snacks. While he did this, Cooper lay dead on the floor at the murder scene, lying in a pool of her own blood. She laid there for over 20 minutes until another unsuspecting customer found her and called the police. Authorities arrested Sean, but public outrage was sparked when LA District Attorney George Gascon suspended his case despite Sean's lengthy criminal history. This controversial decision was made in order to wait while the suspect undergoes a thorough mental health screening. Time will tell if justice for Brianna will be served. Number 9. Head of Hollywood. On December 27, 2011, a retired flight attendant named Harvey Median was strangled and killed. Years after his death, parts of his body were found in a cave nearby the famous Los Angeles Hollywood sign. In March 2014, a worker from the city was excavating in the Bronson Cave system when he found a bag containing human remains. 2 years before the cave discovery in 2012, 66-year-old Median's head was spotted by a dog walker along the trail leading up to the massive sign. Even with this, police couldn't find out what happened to Harvey, why he was killed, or who did it. Many theories circulated, though. Some claimed he was connected to a drug cartel, while others say he was a victim of infamous killer Luca Magnotta. But the truth eventually came out. Median's boyfriend, 40-year-old Gabriel Campos Martinez, was to blame. He claims he killed his lover because he thought they were growing apart and was afraid Harvey might ask him to move out. Investigators discovered damning evidence in Gabriel's internet search history. He had looked up, just a few days before Harvey's death, meat saws and how to make sausage. After the killing, the most disturbing search was butchering the human carcass for human consumption. With that, authorities pretty much had all they needed. The court found Gabriel guilty and he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for the gory murder of his former lover, Harvey Median. Number 8. Revenge of the Felines. On September 25, 2022, a young woman named Hannah Starr Esser took revenge to a whole new level. She'd been accused of killing 43-year-old Louis Anthony Victor by running him over with her car. Now, if you're an animal lover, you might sympathize with Hannah here, even if she did take things way too far. Apparently, she saw Victor trying to kill a cat with his own vehicle. Obviously outraged by what she witnessed, Hannah angrily confronted the man. She recorded the interaction on her phone. She cussed him out for what he did, which would have been the end of things for most people. But Hannah supposedly wanted Victor to feel and truly understand the hurt he was causing an innocent animal. So after yelling at him, she went back to her car, got in, and sped right into Victor. She made contact and he crashed into her windshield before flying over her vehicle and landing behind her on the street. Victor died on the spot. The district attorney claimed that Hannah's actions, quote, showed a complete disregard for human life. But if what she said was true and Victor did try to harm the cat, she definitely showed a complete regard for feline life. What would you have done in Hannah's shoes? Tell us in the comments below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 7. Scooter Strike. On October 6, 2022, a 13-year-old boy entered a liquor store in Highland Park. While inside, the underage child apparently killed the owner of the store with a scooter. 68-year-old Stephen Reyes received a blow straight to the head and died from his injury the next day. The victim's daughter claims her dad was hit multiple times after catching the boy and some of his friends trying to steal alcohol. The group of kids had tried to steal from a Phil-Am earlier that same day. It's believed that along with the boy killer, another young man and 2 girls were there for the attack. It's incredibly sad that these children would go to such extreme measures for just some cheap booze. Detectives are still on the lookout for the remaining suspects and have said that anyone with information on the case should come forward. Number 6. 7-Eleven Killer. The 7-Eleven convenience store seems to be the store that attracts killers. 20-year-old Malik Donye Pat and his accomplice, 44-year-old Jason Lamont Payne, were arrested in July 2022 for a string of crimes that all took place in 7-Elevens across Orange County. 3 charges of murder, 3 robberies, attempted murders, and more have all been linked up to Malik and Payne. Their spree started on July 11th, 7-Eleven, when the two held up a store at gunpoint. Thankfully, in this instance at least, no one was seriously hurt, but just under 2 hours later, the suspects hit up another location. This time, a customer wasn't very lucky and was shot in the head. After this, the men visited a donut shop early in the morning at 3 a.m. and robbed it. A little later, they claimed another victim, a young man named Matthew Rule, outside, you guessed it, a different 7-Eleven. Apparently, Matthew was just going to the store to get his girlfriend a few things when he saw the suspects trying to rob a poor homeless man. Instead of acting like he didn't see anything, he tried to help and ended up losing his life in the process. Malik and Payne also shot and killed an employee and fired rounds at a man sitting in his car. Eventually, police tracked them down and took them into custody. Their sentencing remains unknown, but considering the gravity of their crimes, the men are eligible for the death penalty without a doubt. Number 5. Lady Gaga's dogs. Lady Gaga is the queen of authenticity. She has millions of adoring listeners and fans and is arguably one of the most famous people in the world. But did you know this pop icon is also a loving dog mom? On February 24, 2021, Gaga's 3 French bulldogs were on a walk with the star's dog walker, Ryan Fisher, when a group of 3 individuals walked up and shot at him. Police believe one of the suspects to be 19-year-old James Howard Jackson. After piercing Ryan's lung with a bullet, the men ran off with 2 of the animals. The dogs they took were named Koji and Gustav. A few days after the dog napping, Gaga had put out a $500,000 reward for their safe return, and one of the suspects came forward. He revealed the names of his accomplices, Jalen White and Lafayette White. All 3 of these men and even 2 others connected to the crime were given charges. They claimed they had no idea the bulldogs belonged to Lady Gaga. Apparently, they had heard how much Frenchies can go for on the black market, and they just wanted money. The thieves didn't know who they were messing with. After the incident, news of Koji and Gustav being taken went viral. Police believe the men got concerned over all the attention and just wanted to be done with the situation. What would you do if someone kidnapped your pet? Tell us in the comments below. Number 4. Serial Santa. Christmas is supposed to be the happiest time of the year, spent with your family and loved ones, being grateful for everything that's happening in life. But on Christmas Eve in 2008, one Los Angeles family did not have the festive evening they might have hoped for. Santa Claus showed up on the doorstep of Sylvia, Bruce Pardo's ex-wife, ready to give out presents. Sylvia's 8-year-old daughter Katrina ran up to Mr. Claus before her mother could say anything. The child was just about to give him a hug when suddenly, Santa took out 2 guns and pulled the trigger. After firing at the child, he turned towards the others in the household. There happened to be a Christmas party that night, so there was a small group of people. It didn't take long for them to realize that Santa was actually Bruce. He was there to get revenge on his ex-wife and her family after their recent divorce. His targets weren't specific. Bruce shot at anyone in his way, claiming 9 victims that night. Local news outlets called the massacre Santa's shooting spree. You might be wondering why he was so angry, and it's believed that Sylvia and Bruce divorced after she discovered he had a secret child with another woman. If this wasn't bad enough, Bruce wanted nothing to do with the kid because they were disabled. He wrote them off as if they didn't exist, and when Sylvia found out about this, it was like she was married to a stranger. The man she loved wouldn't have done something like that, but then again, he also wouldn't have shot 9 people. After the shooting, Santa unwrapped the present he brought with him. It was a giant homemade flamethrower that he used to set the house on fire. 80 firefighters worked for over 2 hours to put out the blaze, and at the end of it all, Bruce sustained major burns. It was so bad that his cheap costume had fused with his skin from the heat. Police found the killer Santa's body dead in his brother's home 30 miles away. Bruce had shot himself. He likely couldn't live the reality of what he had done. Christmas would never be the same. Number 3. PNB Rock. Well-known rapper PNB Rock was fatally shot in September 2022 during a believed robbery at Roscoe's House of Chicken and Waffles. Rock, also known as Rakeem Allen, was at the restaurant with a friend and his girlfriend when someone came up and attacked him. It's believed the suspects saw a photo of the location that the rapper had posted on social media and came to confront him. After exchanging a few words, the man shot Rakeem a few times and then escaped in a vehicle parked outside. Police think that he was targeted for the valuable jewelry that he was wearing at the time. Rock's death made ripples throughout the hip-hop community, and artists as big as Nicki Minaj expressed their sympathy and grief over his passing. In his career, Rock collaborated with big names such as Chance the Rapper and even Ed Sheeran. It's incredibly sad that such a bright talent was taken so early. Number 2, DNA cracks the case. In an incredible show of technological prowess, a murderer and rapist was caught after a DNA sample was taken from the sidewalk and used to identify him. 38-year-old Giovanni Borjas was caught last month and accused of sexually assaulting and killing 17-year-old Michelle Lozano and 22-year-old Brianna Guzman back in 2011. In court, Borjas pleaded no contest to these accusations, but the evidence against him is solid. After over a decade of grief and sadness, waiting for justice, the families of the victims may finally get to see the man who took their daughters' lives get what he deserves. On April 24, 2011, Michelle's body was found in pieces near the interstate, held in plastic bags. Brianna's body was found intact in 2012, but with some pieces of clothing missing. Autopsies of the girls revealed that they had both been sexually assaulted. In 2017, Borjas was first arrested and charged, but his trial and court proceedings have just recently started. Originally, he faced the death penalty, but it's likely that he won't receive it. His sentencing will take place on December 12th of this year. Number 1, drugged. In 2021, Los Angeles police arrested a group of 3 men for the deaths of 2 women. The victims were named Christy Giles and Hilda Marcella Cabrales Arzola, and they were just trying to make a name for themselves when they were targeted. Giles was dropped off outside the Southern California hospital on November 13th. Witnesses say the men who left her there were wearing black masks covering their faces and driving a Prius without its license plates. Not long after, the young woman passed away. Arzola was left in front of a Kaiser Permanente medical facility just 1 day before her birthday. Doctors declared her brain dead, and her family made the incredibly difficult decision to take her off of life support. It's believed that the girls were drugged after going to a nightclub in Hollywood. The 2 were supposed to grab an Uber together, but never got picked up. Autopsies showed signs of heroin in Arzola's system, but her family claims she never would have willingly taken a drug like that. 3 suspects have been taken into custody regarding the incident. They are David Pierce, Michael Ansbach, and Brant Osborne. Little information about their trials or sentencing have been released, but hopefully justice is served for Hilda and Christy. Number 8, goodbye went wrong. In 2017, a goodbye went horribly wrong when 21-year-old Brooke Preston went to say goodbye to her roommate and long-term friend, 24-year-old Randy Herman Jr. The pair had been living together for a couple of months in their 813 Saracen Drive home, but after Preston secured a job in her hometown of Bradford County, she decided to move out and go live with her boyfriend there. Friends of Preston have told the police how she had told them that she didn't feel safe and comfortable in the house with Herman anymore, and was glad that she was finally able to move out. She had already left the home, had breakfast with a friend, and she and Herman both shared, and then went back to the house on March 25, 2017 to pick up her belongings. When she arrived, Herman gave her a parting gift, which was a t-shirt that paid tribute to a friend they both shared that had passed away. Right after he did that, he took a hunting knife and stabbed Preston dozens of times in the back, abdomen, neck, and hands until she was dead. Herman fled the scene to Haverhill Park, just a few blocks away from his home, and then called 911. In the call, he said, quote, "Someone's been murdered. I'm at Haverhill Park. Just send the police. It was me. I'm sorry," end quote. Then he texted his mom and told her he loved her and was arrested shortly afterward. Herman claimed that he didn't remember the attack at all, saying that what he remembered giving Preston the t-shirt, hugging her goodbye, and then he just blacked out. When he came to, he was holding the hunting knife and there was blood everywhere. Throughout the trial, he tried to blame the attack on several different things, including sleepwalking, but it was obvious that his attack was deliberate. On May 9, 2019, Herman was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison for Preston's death. Number 7, found in Florida. People go to rehab so they can beat addiction and lead better lives. And that's exactly what 20-year-old Jenna Jacobson thought she was going to do. She signed up for rehab but never actually made it there. Her father said she started rehab treatment in New York and while at that facility was told by a fellow patient that if she went to a particular rehab facility in Florida, she'd have a better time during the treatment and would actually recover. This is also called, quote, illegal patient brokering, where people go to different facilities to broker patients into going for another treatment facility that may have starkly better prospects. As Jacobson left her New York rehab in April 2019 and made her way to Florida, something happened and she disappeared. She was reported missing. She was last seen in an alley in Lake Worth Beach with a 26-year-old man who had a warrant out for his arrest already. Deputies were present at the location and ran after the man to arrest him, but he fled. By the time they got handcuffs on them, Jacobson had fled and was never seen again. She had made no effort to contact her family, or she simply wasn't able to, but the police tirelessly searched for her. On May 30th, 2019, police found skeletal remains belonging to a woman in a shallow grave that they thought belonged to Jacobson. To this day, no one knows what happened to her after she was baited to come to Florida, who killed her, how she died, and how her bones ended up in that grave. The case remains an unsolved mystery. Number 6, star goes missing. When someone goes missing, it's usually people that were living ordinary lives and weren't noticed to be missing until it was too late. This case is a lot different. This is the case of Gabby Petito, a social media star that went missing in the craziest way possible. In July 2021, Petito embarked on what she called her dream road trip with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. The pair were notorious on YouTube and Instagram for living the van life and would upload vlogs of their trip all the time. They did so about this road trip too, but something went wrong with this one. When Laundrie came back to his parents' home in Florida in September, he came back alone. Not only did he refuse to answer questions about where Petito was, 3 days after he came back home, he went for a hike and disappeared too. Their families reported Petito and Laundrie missing, and an investigation was underway. One of the things the officers found was that the pair were stopped in Utah in August after a possible domestic violence situation was noticed when their van was seen driving recklessly. There's also body cam footage of the pair being questioned for an entire hour where Petito looks to be in physical and emotional distress. However, Laundrie convinces the officers that she's crazy and has to take medication for her anxiety. She also told the officers that she had punched him in the face during an argument which caused the van to swerve. The pair was eventually let go, and that was the last time anyone ever saw Petito alive. On September 19, 2021, the police found Petito's body right outside Grand Teton National Park, an area where their van had been seen a few weeks prior. The autopsy confirmed that Petito was strangled to death 4 weeks before her body was found. They immediately pointed fingers at Laundrie, who was still missing himself after illegally using Petito's debit card and other financial accounts. The police were searching for him day in and day out, and on October 7, 2021, his parents joined the search and guided the police to one of his favorite spots in Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park. It was there that they discovered the skeletal remains of Laundrie. His cause of death could not be determined. It can't be confirmed whether Laundrie was the one that killed Petito, but all signs point to that. Do you think Brian Laundrie murdered Gabby Petito? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5, try till the end. Nicole Montalvo was a woman that had suffered a lot of abuse at the hands of her husband, Christopher Otero Rivera, but no matter what, her main priority would always be her son. She was willing to put herself in harm's way as long as her son was able to live a life where he had both of his parents present throughout his life. That need ended up being her downfall. Montalvo had been abused both emotionally and physically by Rivera for almost the entirety of their relationship. On more than one occasion, he seriously injured her, even almost snapping her neck one time in an altercation she had with another woman he had been cheating with. All signs pointed to the fact that he wanted to kill her. Rivera was also in and out of jail for other crimes he was committing throughout his life, and Montalvo was struggling to live the way she was living. So in February of 2019, she finally decided it was enough and filed for divorce. For the next couple months while she and Rivera were no longer together, he and his family were making an effort to at least maintain a somewhat healthy relationship with their 8-year-old son. Montalvo thought that although he was a horrible husband, he still had the potential of being a good father, so she decided that they could share custody and that Rivera could meet him for a few days of the week. She even said to the judge handling their divorce case that Chris was, quote, a good dad and we just can't be together. On October 21, 2019, Montalvo was dropping her son off at Rivera's so that they could spend some time together, and she was never heard from again. When the police went looking, her dismembered remains were found at the premises. She was killed in such a gruesome manner that the officers on the scene said that they had never seen something so traumatizing before. When Montalvo's body was found, Rivera was wearing an ankle monitor as part of his release from an earlier crime. Christopher Rivera blamed his father Angel Luis Rivera for Montalvo's murder, but eventually, in July 2021, both men were sentenced to life in prison for the premeditated murder of Montalvo. They confessed that they wanted the mother to, quote, disappear so that they could have full custody of the 8-year-old son. Instead, the attack left the boy without any parents to look after him. Number 4. No shoes and a burned car. On September 19, 2021, Sheridan Wall, a 21-year-old college student from Florida, had been traveling to Myrtle Beach to visit her father for the day. While there, she tried renting a scooter and was told that she couldn't because she didn't have shoes on. She ended up calling her mother over FaceTime to tell her about the incident and to vent about how annoying it was. Her mother told her that she should just go through with seeing her dad, stay in Myrtle Beach for the night, and drive back to Florida the next day. The way was long, and driving in the darkness might not be the safest. That call was around 1 p.m., and after that, no one heard from Wall again. Her mother kept calling and calling throughout the day, but no one would answer and it would just go to voicemail. Worried about her whereabouts, she even went so far as to call Sheridan's father, but he had no idea where she was or how she never made it home. Right before midnight, she called the authorities to report her daughter missing. On September 21st, the police in Florence County were contacted about an abandoned burgundy Toyota sedan without any plates or personal details inside. The car was found in a cornfield in Scranton, over 50 miles from where Wall had FaceTimed her mother. When the authorities got there, they found the car had been torched, and 10 miles away, they found the body of a blonde white woman with no shoes on, lying face down in the ground. Her skin was molting because she had been there for such a long while, and her face could not be identified. DNA tests confirmed that it was the body of Sheridan Wall. What the authorities couldn't figure out, though, was how she died. To this day, they're investigating the case, trying to figure out what really happened after that FaceTime call and how she ended up face down in the cornfield a day after disappearing. Number 3. The entire family gone. On September 14th, a worried mother called 911 and told the operator that she was worried about her daughter, Casey Jones, and 4 grandchildren, none of whom she had been able to make contact with for over 2 weeks. She requested a welfare check be made at the Florida residence. 2 weeks is an alarmingly long time for someone to be missing, so the authorities went into it with caution, and they were right. The home was entirely empty and had been that way for many days at that point. When they looked inside, they could see buckets of bleach and cleaner with a mop resting by the door. The officers at the scene asked the neighbors when they last saw the family, and they admitted that they had been gone for at least 2 weeks. They also added that around that time, they went past their home and noticed an overwhelmingly awful stench coming from it, describing it as, quote, something dead. 1 day later, the authorities got a call that Casey's husband, Michael Wayne Jones, had been in a car crash on Highway 301 in Georgia. When the police arrived, he told them that his wife was dead, adding that he had killed her a couple of weeks ago and that her body was inside the van. When they looked inside, it was true, and Jones was immediately taken into custody. There, he was asked about what happened and the whereabouts of his children. He told them that he got into an argument with his wife, where she had accused him of cheating and was pushing him with a bat. He yanked the bat out of her hand and hit her with it repeatedly in the head until she died. In a chilling, heartless moment, he said that he killed her because he was, quote, sick of her nagging, poking, and prodding, and couldn't think of another way to shut her up. He then realized that there were 4 children in the picture too, aged 1, 2, 4, and 10. At first, he tried to drive away with them, hoping they could just play it off as Cassie ran away, but soon realized that it wasn't going to happen. So in a last-ditch effort to save himself, he strangled and drowned all 4 of them, packed their bodies in totes and suitcases, and left them in a heavily wooded area in Georgia. The police were able to recover the bodies once Jones led them to the location. Jones has been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of his children and second-degree murder for the death of Casey. He's yet to be sentenced, but the state is going after the death penalty. Number 2, the Fort Myers 8. In March of 2007, a land surveyor was checking out the area she had been working in Fort Myers. It was an empty, heavily wooded area where not a lot of people came by, so she wasn't expecting to see anything but land. But then, everything changed, where she found a skull in the middle of the forest and called 911. It was scary enough that the skull was found, but things got eventually much more terrifying when the bodies of 8 more people were found through the area. The remains had nothing on them, no clothing, belts, accessories, baggage, nothing. If their identities were ever going to be found, it was going to be through DNA testing. As the remains were being studied, it was determined that they were the remains of men between the ages of 18 and 45. The cause of death was unclear for all of them. There were no bullet holes, no signs of trauma, nothing. It was as if they just went there and peacefully passed away. The only thing they all had in common was their genders and the fact that they all had head-healed fractures on their body, pointing to the fact that they probably led a hard life. The authorities were able to create wax faces of the men using their skulls, hoping that someone would be able to identify them. However, since 2007, only 3 of the bodies have been identified, and none of them happen to be any connection with each other. Who the other 5 are and what happened to them remains a mystery. Number 1. Tammy Lynn Leppert disappeared after an argument. Those who have seen the movie Scarface would probably be familiar with Tammy Lynn Leppert's face. The 18-year-old had been acting and modeling since she was a toddler. After participating in 300 pageants since the age of 4, she racked up 280 crowns. She even appeared on the front of CoverGirl magazine. Everyone in the industry thought that she was bound to achieve great things, but that never ended up happening. After appearing in a small part in the 1983 movie Spring Break, Leppert went to a party. According to her best friend, Wing Flanagan, she came back from that party, quote, a different person. Throughout the next month or so, Leppert continued to show signs of being affected by something mentally. She was becoming more and more paranoid by the day, to the point that she wouldn't even eat anything out of an open container. Her mother said that she was constantly on the edge, believing that someone would murder her. It got so bad that Leppert's mother took her to a psychiatric unit after she had suffered a pretty intense breakdown at the home. But after a 72-hour evaluation, it was concluded that she didn't have a mental illness, nor did she have a dependency on any addictive substances. On July 6, 1983, Leppert, who was just 18 years old at the time, left her house in a hurry without even combing her hair. She left in a friend's car, who later told the police that he had an argument with her and dropped her off at a gas station in Cocoa Beach in Florida. He was ruled out as a suspect, but no one else had ever seen or heard from Tammy Leppert since then. Some thought she had been murdered by the serial killer called the Beauty Queen Killer. Others thought that she could have fallen victim to drug and money rings. Some even think she didn't want the Hollywood life and disappeared on purpose, but no concrete evidence linking her to any of the 3 scenarios has ever been found. Number 10. Bad publicity. In May 2005, a former employee of a Vegas strip club was shot to death. Why? Because he badmouthed his ex-employers. 44-year-old Timothy Hadlin was a doorman at the Palomino on the main Vegas Boulevard. However, after some friction between him and the owners, he decided to call it quits and work somewhere else. He figured that casually mentioning the bad behavior of his ex-boss to cab drivers would be pretty harmless, but boy was he wrong. Apparently, the owner, Luis Hidalgo, thought that Hadlin's talkative nature was costing him thousands in lost revenue. Rather than hitting him up and sorting the issue out like an adult, though, he decided to go down the mafia route. After all, he was the owner of a club. He issued a hit on his ex-employee, saying that anyone who disposed of him would get $5,000 as a reward. Days later, Hadlin was found dead in the middle of a deserted road near Lake Mead with a gunshot wound to the head. Interestingly enough, flyers for the club were also littered around his body, which showed that they were trying to make an example out of him. It didn't take long for the kingpin energy to leave Hidalgo, as he was arrested along with his son, the actual shooter, Kenneth Counts, and his girlfriend, who pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter. And now, they all face life in prison. Number 9. Free manicure. In December 2018, a woman ran over and killed her manicurist while trying to skip out on a $35 bill. 23-year-old Crystal Whipple showed up at the Crystal Nails and Spa in Vegas to get her nails done, and honestly, she seemed like your ordinary run-of-the-mill customer. So, not questioning anything, the 51-year-old manager, New Annie Nguyen, told the new client to sit down for a fresh coat of paint on her nails. The manicure was done and dusted in no time at all. When Annie asked Crystal to pay up, though, there was something off about her. At first, she hesitated and then proceeded to get a credit card out to make the $35 payment. But her intentions were soon made clear when the card returned an error saying that it had been stolen. Of course, she wasn't ever going to admit it and tried to escape in her car under the guise of getting cash from it. Even the car she was driving, a black Camaro, didn't belong to her. When she hit the ignition and tried to get away, Annie ran out to the parking lot to block her from leaving. Crystal, on the other hand, just couldn't take the embarrassment anymore and decided decided that it would be a good idea to hit the gas and run the manager over instead. And she didn't just run her over, she dragged her body with the car for 50 feet or just about 15 meters, which obviously killed her. She was arrested from her home later that week and was eventually handed down a sentence of 10 to 25 years after pleading guilty to second-degree murder. Number 8. Jealous boyfriend. In May 2022, Vegas police received a 911 call saying that a woman had been stabbed in the backyard of a home. When officers arrived on the scene, they found out that it was her own boyfriend who did the stabbing. 20-year-old Michael Munoz Andrade had a suspicion that his girlfriend was cheating on him. Rather than confronting her about it, he decided to hide at a friend's place and ambush her there instead. When she turned up at the house to borrow some things, he sprung up at her, accusing her and throwing tantrums. As much as she tried to calm the situation, things just kept getting more and more heated, so much so that he started shouting that if he couldn't have her, then no one else could either. He then grabbed a knife from the kitchen and started chasing her across the garden. Apparently, his intention was to kill his girlfriend and then himself. The girlfriend knew that Michael also had a history of domestic battery, which meant that what he was threatening was very much real. Minutes later, the next-door neighbor was rushing over to provide first aid to the girl who'd just been stabbed twice in her stomach. Thankfully, she was taken to the hospital in time. Michael, on the other hand, was held down by other bystanders until the police arrived. He was arrested and charged with attempted murder. Interestingly enough, his defense was that he'd blacked out and that he wanted mental health treatment rather than jail time. Number 7. A Dance of Love and Death. In January 2011, Vegas police stumbled upon the remains of a cirque dancer who had gone missing a few weeks prior. The suspect? Her ex-lover. 35-year-old Jason Griffith, who also went by the stage name Blue, was a dancer in the Cirque du Soleil show Love at the Mirage Resort. Years of stage work in Sin City had turned him into a bit of a sexual animal, as he regularly juggled girlfriends and sexual acquaintances. Even when he met Debbie Flores at a football halftime show in 2009, it was hard for him to resist his cheating tendencies. Debbie had a stage role in the racy fantasy review at the Luxor, which meant that she was also in the same industry as Blue. The pair had pretty good chemistry. Little did she know, however, that their relationship wasn't monogamous at all, as Blue kept sleeping with other women behind her back. Their relationship was inherently broken, as Debbie herself had a lot of anger issues. Plus, all the deception didn't help. Oh, and apparently he also bailed on her a bunch of times, even while she was getting an abortion, only to come back months later. Usually these arguments were just that, mere arguments, but the trouble had been brewing, and eventually it had to explode. When Debbie got pregnant a second time, she reached out to Blue again, telling him that he needed to devote all of his attention to her. One thing led to another, and things got violent. When she reached into her purse, Blue panicked and put her into a headlock. He held her tightly until she stopped struggling. Not knowing what to do next, he decided to dismember her body and dump the pieces in a tub of concrete just so he could save his dancing career. Unfortunately for him, his roommate, Louis Colombo, led police to Debbie's body, and Blue was charged with murder and sentenced to 10 years to life in prison. Do you think 10 years to life is a fair sentence? Tell us in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Abusive pimp tries Texas. In June 2020, a woman was hit and killed by a car on Interstate 610 after she was seen running away from her supposed pimp. 29-year-old Deandros Finks was a pimp around the Vegas Strip and had been in the business for a while, but with the pandemic closing casinos down in the area, he decided to try his luck in Houston instead. He got his band of prostitutes together and moved to a vacation rental to seek better business. One of the women realized that she didn't want to work and live with him anymore, so she packed her bags and got ready to leave. Finks, not being the easiest of negotiators, couldn't stand someone leaving him like that and tried to force her back into his house instead. At this point, she dropped everything and ran toward the interstate with Finks running after her. She thought that she'd be able to get away from her abusive pimp by making it across the highway, and to be fair, she almost did, until sadly, she was hit by a car and killed. Finks' story was that she got a bit too drunk with one of his customers who dropped her on the wrong side of the freeway, but surveillance footage from the property was enough to put his claims to rest, as he now faces a murder charge. Number 5. Evidence. In May 2017, the Vegas police received reports of a man who'd been stabbed to death in his Central Valley apartment. It was a used condom that led them to the actual suspect. 25-year-old Shawnice McKinley, who was a prostitute at the Palace Station Casino, wasn't used to getting super rich customers, so when 80-year-old Norman walked up to her to get her services, she thought that she had just hit the jackpot. The pair quickly got into his Jaguar and sped away to his Central Valley apartment. After everything was done, it was time for Shanice to leave with her money, but she just couldn't let go of the incredible opportunity that was in front of her. So, not really thinking about the consequences, she decided to stab him to death and steal a bunch of stuff from his apartment. The following morning, Norman's family members found him dead in the apartment with no sign of a killer anywhere. Shanice had done a pretty good job of hiding all of the evidence, and she almost got away with it until the detective stumbled upon a used condom in the room. Sadly for her, it had her DNA on it, which eventually led to her arrest. She now faces murder charges. Number 4. Magic mushrooms. In October 2011, police responded to reports of a man who stopped breathing inside his apartment, which he also used to grow illegal magic mushrooms. The 45-year-old man ran a pretty decent-sized operation from his apartment on King Richard Avenue, where he grew the psilocybin mushrooms. There were tons of plants growing in aquariums used for cultivation, with each ounce selling for over $200. Police also found a bunch of fully processed hallucinogenic fungus, which was also ready for sale. Now, the thing with making magic mushrooms at home is that first you probably shouldn't do it, and if you decide to delve into that for some reason, having appropriate safety gear is a must. Even the police officers investigating the scene had to wear hazmat suits to avoid toxic fumes, but the man didn't realize that and inhaled a bit too much of the magic gas. He was later found dead by his roommate with no signs of violence. Magic mushrooms are poisonous if not handled or consumed properly. In fact, even the coroner deemed that the death wasn't suspicious. The roommate was not charged with any crimes either. Number 3. Lightning does strike twice. In August 2022, Vegas police received reports of a deadly shooting at a hotel that left one man dead and 2 women injured. 54-year-old Billy Hemsley was spending the night with his 49-year-old cousin Artorius Milner, his niece, and her girlfriend in a room at the Mirage on the Las Vegas Strip. Apparently, the 2 cousins were just messing around and play fighting when someone said something hurtful, which ignited an argument between them. One thing led to another, and things quickly got violent as Milner started choking Billy. Little did he know, however, that his cousin was actually carrying a gun on him. Billy pulled out that gun, shot the other 3 people in the room, and then fled the scene. The police took less than a minute to respond, but even that was too late, as Milner was already dead. His daughter and her girlfriend were taken to the hospital in critical condition. The daughter was shot 15 times. Billy was arrested on the same night, but here's the interesting part. This isn't the first time that he's tried to kill his cousin. Court records show that he tried to shoot at and kill Milner almost 20 years ago in 2003, which he obviously survived. He spent a year and a half in jail for it as well. But that's not all, as Billy was also charged with attempted murder after stabbing a woman in 2012, for which he'd spent several years in prison. So this definitely wasn't his first rodeo, and perhaps he'd spent the last 2 decades plotting his revenge all along. Number 2. Slot machine thief. In May 2022, a man's attempt at petty crime turned very dark when he ran over and killed someone while fleeing the scene. 28-year-old Samuel Schmid had a history of robbery and decided he was going to steal a purse from someone gambling at Dottie's slot machine casino. It was meant to be a quick crime, in and out. Little did he know, however, that this day would be his undoing. Samuel ran into Dottie's, spotted his target at one of the machines, pointed a gun at her head, and stole her purse. While he was running outside, it almost felt like he had hit the jackpot. What he hadn't factored into his mastermind plan, though, was the 60-year-old manager of the parlor, Alicia Gibellina, coming after him. So when he got into his stolen black Mercedes SUV, she stood behind the car. Of course, he wasn't going to surrender to an old lady, so he proceeded to reverse into her instead, which in turn ended up killing her. He was then arrested in Riverside County in Southern California, from where he was extradited back to Nevada and now faces a murder charge. Number 1. Deadly siblings. In May 2021, police received reports of gunshots near Twain Avenue. When officers arrived, they noticed a group of people standing near a crashed car, which had a dead man inside it. 21-year-old Sarif El Amin had been shot in his chest while driving, leading to the car crashing. This happened at around 4 a.m., and there weren't any witnesses around, but some clever trickery and mobile location wizardry led them to the 2 prime suspects, Ryan and Devwan Corte Griffith. The 2 siblings were both booked on charges of murder, conspiracy, and robbery. What exactly prompted them to do this, though? Well, apparently Ryan and El Amin were in his car driving to her apartment, where he dropped her off. Ryan said that she spotted her brother standing near his white Camaro and some other people outside. The group noticed El Amin had a gun in his pocket, and they asked him to see it, but he refused. He got back into the car and tried to drive away, but was approached at the window and shot in the chest. He crashed at the end of the street. Ryan got into her brother's car and tried to flee, but then she realized she left her phone in Elamine's car. Then she went back for it, and that's how detectives traced her phone back to the crime scene. Ryan refused to implicate her brother, saying that she never saw him shoot and only told him to drive to the scene later because she'd forgotten her phone in the car. Ryan's cloudy recollection of the event doesn't quite add up though, and the siblings are now facing murder charges. Thanks for watching. If you were to win the jackpot at a Vegas casino, what would you do with all that money? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.